right, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for getting to the final week of the college prep program with Youth Rise and Cities Rise. Thank you so much for being here, and we hope you enjoy our final college prep day. Yes, this week we're talking about planning and timing, as the slide said. So we have a third presenter today. So Madeline, go ahead, present yourself, introduce yourself, the school you're going to, and what your major is going to be.
Hi guys, if you don't know me, I'm Madeline and I went to Kennedy High School and now I'm going to UC Santa Cruz this next year. And my current major is Education, Democracy, and Justice. So nice to meet you if you haven't been here.
All right, Nailah, would you like to introduce yourself and everything for everyone?
Yes, I can. Hi, everyone. My name is Nailah DeVos. I am a graduating senior of the Rexler Margaret Fortune Early College High School, a small charter school in Elk Grove, California. And I will be attending Cal Poly SLO as a psychology major on a pre-med track. Nice to meet you all.
And my name is Sara. I went to John F. Kennedy High School in Sacramento, California. I'm going to UCLA next year to major in sociology on a pre-law track. So that's pretty exciting. And yeah, really happy to have met everybody. And hopefully this last meeting is really helpful. All right. Okay, so we are now going to have Nailah give you kind of the outline for today.
So first up on the docket is going to be the calendar template. Then we'll move on to discussing testing and prereqs. Then we'll just further discuss applications, then supplemental materials that can or will be uploaded to your application, then what to do after the application, after you've submitted your application, and then lastly, my favorite part, your mental health tip number 4.
Thank you, Nailah. Next, Madeline is going to kind of introduce our calendar template, which is basically what we're going to use for most of today and even after today.
So our first section today is the calendar template, like Sara said, and this is really to help you keep on track during college app season. There's tons of different moving parts during the whole process, so it helps to have it really organized and planned out and be able to take it one step at a time. And so we're going to start off with the calendar we have for you that Nailah is going to talk more about.
Right. So as you can see, it's a brief screenshot of a monthly calendar template that we've curated, and it goes all the way from August 2021 up until May of 2022. Like Madeline said, there's a lot of different moving parts to the college application process, so this is going to be your best friend. So in the chat and after the meeting as well, we'll throw in a link to access the PDF version of the calendar, and you can print it out on your own time and then go back in and fill in all the dates and deadlines that we talked about. Again, we will provide you with the information that we shared today.
Nailah.
And then on this slide, we have a supplemental materials tracker. And this is where you keep track of your resumes, letters of recommendations, optional introductory videos. They say it's optional, but we recommend that you do them. And other supplemental materials that can be added to your actual application. Again, you see the link there in the chat, and we will share it with you afterwards.
So for this month-by-month template, you can do it however you want, and you can make up your own deadlines based on the official deadlines from colleges. But I wanted to show like kind of what I did for college, or at least what I tried to do for college applications. And so just some starting notes about this like month-by-month sample is that everyone's calendar is going to look different. Like I said, you don't have to necessarily follow a certain pattern, but it does help to start everything on the earlier end, and also kind of split it up, like I said before. And then sticking to this general schedule is helpful, but it's not the end of the world if you stray from your created deadlines, as long as you meet the official deadlines by schools. And then it's normal to feel overwhelmed. So breaking it into sections like this and month by month, because that's kind of your timeline, is really going to help. And so in the next couple of slides, I'm going to show September through December of what I kind of think is a good plan for you to do. So if you want to screenshot right now or later on, if you watch the video, if you want to screenshot, this can be a helpful resource. But as a main idea, September, you can start writing your common and coalition essay, and you can try to use the same essay for both as long as you apply it to 2 different similar prompts. And then start communicating with your teachers to write your letters of recommendation and to edit your essays. And then you can also start your supplemental essay drafts and send your drafts to your English teacher and make decisions about which deadlines you're going to take. So if you want to do an early decision or early action program, it's important to figure that out in September so you know when you're aiming for. And then also you have stuff that you want your parents to do, like gathering all the financial aid info that you're going to need for the FAFSA and the other different financial aid applications. So that's the general idea of what is happening in September. And if you can take notes or screenshot, that'll be helpful for you later on. And then for October, it's split into weeks here. So you're first going to want to enter data. So this is a good month for the beginning to be data entering, which is kind of a monotonous process until you get the list of activities, and then you have to do a lot of thinking. But if you kind of prep that beforehand, that part will be easier too. And then you can draft your UC essays because those are due in November. So you want to make sure you have those done in time. And then this is another section where you're going to want to get more drafts to your teacher for edits and request a date every time you do that, so that it's a date before the actual deadline. So you don't want to request the actual day that the college application is due for them to get it back to you, because then if they get it in late or you don't like their edits, you're going to be kind of stuck in a sticky situation. So you don't want that to happen. And you also want to review all your applications for errors, and you can submit some of your applications in October if you're done with them already, but that's not always necessary. And then for November, you will get your UC essay edits back, and then you can make edits that resonate with you, send those in. You can submit UCs and any Common Coalition apps with supplemental essays, and make sure that you send a thank you card or email to your teachers who helped you for letter of recommendation and edits. And then in December, that's like the latest application due date for CSUs. So anyways, that was kind of a general and specific overview of the months, but that's kind of a good plan to follow by. And then just for some tips, you want to write your Common App essay first and then reuse or revamp it for supplemental essays and UC essays, because then you can do a lot less work and it can still fit your different categories, and you can always shrink it down or lengthen it, but it helps to have somewhere, a base to start with, and not write just 20 million different essays. And then same type of idea, you want to complete your UC activity section first because it has the most amount of activities, and then you can kind of shorten it to your most important ones for the Common and Coalition. And you can also start this first on a Google document until the UC application is open. That's a lot of information, but hopefully it's understandable.
All right, so now I'm going to talk a bit about testing and prerequisites. Before that, I'm going to try to spotlight the three of us so that you can hopefully see all of us. Okay. Okay, can everybody see us? Hopefully it like stays now. That will just help so that you don't lose the presenters on your screen. But yes, I'm going to talk about testing and some prerequisites and dates you want to keep in mind. Because honestly, testing can be one of those things that you don't think about, and then right up at the deadline, you're like, oh, I wish I had taken this test, or I wish that I had, retaken a test. Some of you will be taking the SAT and stuff like that with your school, but if you're not, this is definitely something you want to be paying a lot of attention to. So for testing, there is a lot of tests you could schedule. It really depends on what you are taking. If you're in an IB program or in AP classes, you might already have those pre-scheduled by your school or by the IB system or the AP system. So those might already be done for you and not something you really have to be concerned about. But some of the ones that most schools don't schedule for you are SAT subject tests, SATs, and the ACT. If you go to Kennedy, like Madeline and I did, they will schedule the SAT for you. And I believe the school pays for registration too, which is really great. But not every school has that. So if your school does not have that and does not have a date that you have to take the SAT, you're going to want to be taking that. In addition, a lot of schools will actually require you to take SAT subject tests, meaning you might be taking, if you've taken Latin in school, you could take the Latin subject test, and that shows that you have proficiency in a different subject. I believe there's also math. There's a lot of different subjects. You could take an English subject test. So those are just ideas for almost like a supplemental type of test that you could have on your application that might make you stand out from other people. These, like I said, are required by some colleges, and a lot of colleges these days are saying that they are optional. But if there is a space on the application, even if it is optional for you to add in test scores, that means that it's recommended. So even if a school is saying you don't have to do it, you would want to aim to do it if you can. And this would just help you set apart from other people, because if you think about it, some schools might not require you to submit the SAT score, but if you had a decent score on it, then putting that up there and putting that on your application could set you apart from the rest of the group who doesn't set their SAT score on there. Just something to think about. It's something that I did even though it wasn't required, because I thought it might help me be kind of separate from other people. Same with the ACT. The difference here is that the ACT is more math and science focused. So if you're going to a technical college or applying to a technical college like MIT or California Institute of Technology, then those you would want to be maybe taking the SAT and the ACT, or at least just the ACT, to show that you have proficiency in math and science. It is also required by some schools. So you want to make sure that you're checking based on the schools that you are considering if they take the SAT or the ACT. That was a lot of a mouthful here, but just some subject test and SAT dates. These are all of the dates that they currently have posted on their website. If you have not taken your SAT or you want to retake your SAT, which is definitely an option, you can take it on any of these upcoming dates. I put an asterisk next to this first one because the registration for the August 28th test actually ends tomorrow. So if you plan to take it as soon as possible, maybe you're about to be a senior and you know you won't have time to study during the school year, register by tonight. Make sure that it is registered by tonight so you don't even have to worry about missing the deadline. You don't have to pay any late fees or anything. And then, of course, you would want to start studying, which we'll talk about in a second. There's other dates like October, November, and December, but recognize this huge gap here between December and March. So if you are about to be a senior right now, you should try to take it by October because it takes a while for your scores to be processed. Just some things to keep in mind here. And when you do retake tests, this is important. A lot of people don't know this. You can super score your scores. So for the math section and the English/writing section, you can actually take your highest from each and create the highest possible score. So that is a good option if you want to retake it. Here's some ACT upcoming dates. There's one on September 11th. There's one on October 23rd. So just some things to keep in mind here. There's less of a gap between December and February here. But again, if you are about to be a senior, try to take it in September or October so you can get your scores in time for college applications. In terms of studying, I wouldn't recommend just going into the SAT. If you've never taken the PSAT, the practice SAT, then you should definitely be doing some online practice here. So what I recommend with this is trying to plan ahead, try to study consistently and very often, like at least once or twice a week, and use free resources. I've linked Khan Academy here. You'll see this is with Khan Academy. You can actually put in your information from the College Board if you've taken the PSAT, and it will curate a specific practice schedule just for you. I will tell you, I used this and I boosted my score 160 points. So that's a lot if you know the SAT scoring system. I definitely recommend practicing and doing it consistently once a week, twice a week, whatever works for you. All right, now Nailah is going to talk about some other prerequisites.
Thank you, Sara. Great presentation. So some other prerequisites that you'll find on your applications include letters of recommendation, your activities list, and an academic resume. So if you're new, don't worry, we are going to discuss all of this. So your letters of recommendation are essentially letters from teachers, coaches, mentors, and other important figures in your life that can speak to who you are as an academic and who you are as a person. Now, it's very important that you understand the difference between the two. We highly recommend that you ask for help when needed. Don't be afraid to do that. And we recommend that you have between 3 to 6 letters of recommendation from different school subjects and categories. So going back to my first point, what I did is I attended an early college high school, which meant that I took high school and college courses all the way from 9th through 12th grade. So I had 2 letters of recommendations from teachers at my high school who could speak to, again, my academic and who I am as a character, as a person. And then I had 2 letters of recommendations from my professors. And when I picked these people, I picked these people who I participated in their class the most, got the best grades, got the best scores, um, and people I interacted with and built a relationship with, right? Because again, they need to speak to who you are as a person and who you are as a scholar. Additionally, I then ventured out and gathered letters from people in my life who are community leaders, faith leaders, and can speak to other aspects of myself. So I play basketball, so I got a letter from one of my coaches, my athletic director at my school. I also was involved heavily in my church, so I got a letter from my pastor, and then from another pastor who have interacted with me as well. And then I got a letter from an educational leader. Um, she has been my mentor, and she has seen me grow from literally third grade to now. So think about that when you're making your list of people you want to write you letters of recommendation. And then lastly, we have our activities list. And so what your activities list is, it's a list of all the activities and extracurriculars from high school. And so what you want to do is you want to start now creating a list, breaking down all the activities that you participated in: debate, drama club, chess club, student leadership, choir, etc. Not even things that were just involved in your school, but even in your community. Make a list of that. And you want to start with when you started it, a short, brief description of it, and the duration, how long it lasted. We've created a template for you, and we'll put that in the chat. You want to start doing this now because I didn't start doing it until my 11th grade year. So it really bothered me when I had to sit down and think about every little thing that I've done from 9th grade till now. So start doing that now. Next slide, please. And then lastly, your academic resume. So what this is essentially your resume that highlights all of your academic and noteworthy personal achievements. I've also shown on the next slide, you'll see an image of an example of a resume. Well,
Yeah, so Madeline's going to talk about activities and then we'll show you those examples.
okay.
Yeah, so going along with the same ideas that Nailah was talking about, I have found the most helpful process to building an activities list and building a resume is to take it in 3 steps. And the 3 steps that I've created are brain dump, organize, and polish. So the first step is a brain dump. So just as they come to you and as you're thinking about it, if you start thinking now, just list any and all activities that you've done over the course of your high school experience. And if there's any notable ones that have lasted longer, you can write those down too. And you can just think about like what they were, when you did them, any time frame stuff, but you don't need that necessarily right away. It's just kind of getting everything you've done out on a piece of paper. And this can kind of be more your list of activities on a document that you can then turn later into your college application or your resume. And then the second thing is organize. So this is where you categorize them with time frames. You want to pay more attention to the details and think harder about when you did this, why it was important, that type of a thing. And we'll talk more about how you can organize on the next slide. And then the last thing is polish. So at this point, you're going to take your most important activities and polish them into a resume format. And this is where you might have to take some things off of the list for this one specific format, but it's to show for whatever it is you're doing. If it was a resume for a job, you might want to include specific activities, or if it's a resume that you're including with a college application for a supplemental material, it might look differently. So you can also pay attention to what you're using the resume for. And then on the next slide, we're going to show images of what these could look like. So the first image is a brain dump example, which is my list of activities. So it was kind of just messy. It was me writing up what things I've done. I kind of tried to organize it a tiny bit, but it was just like a little description about each thing so that I had them written down and I knew everything I'd done. And then the second thing Nailah will talk more about, which is organizing.
Yeah. So like we said, we created the activities list and resume tracker. And so I broke it down into how I was going to build out my resume. So the sections include education. So obviously where you went to school at. In my case, I had to put both my high school and then the community college that I attended when I attended it, and then a short brief description about that. And then I broke it down into honors/awards. So this would include all of your honorable awards, any other special awards that you've received. Maybe you're part of like National Honor Society, you want to put that there. The next section that I broke it down to were extracurricular activities and community service. And then lastly, work experience and internships. So that's how we organize that on your activities list and resume tracker. Again, we broke it down then even further by location. So where this happened, that section, and then the date, so how long it lasted, and then a brief description. You're going to want to do that now. So that way, when you go to throw it on your resume, it'll be easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and you won't have to be stressing about it later down. Next slide.
Oh yeah, and just as a thing here, Nailah obviously provided a great example of like a polished resume. Madeline and I obviously did different things than Nailah. We didn't go to an early college high school, so ours look different. But if you need multiple examples, be sure to like put in the chat and we can always show you at the end of today. So just let us know. But yes, just wanted to mention that.
And just to add, I got my template from Google Docs. So you can find this same template on Google Docs. And that's why it's important that you create that activities list and utilize the activities list and resume tracker now. So that way you just flip it on there and it's already formatted for you. All you have to do is fill in the information.
Yeah. And also it helps to, sorry, this is real quick last note to the last thing. It helps to ask people you know, like around you, to see their resume and kind of see how they worded things too, to get the idea of how you word things. Like I know I looked at my mom's, even though it was super old, and it at least helped me with how you're supposed to word different things, like your qualities, all of that in the format. So that helps. And the next thing is letters of recommendation. So this process can be kind of stressful, especially if you're an anxious person like me, like, and you don't like communication, and Sara. And so the first, taking in steps, just like everything else, and also knowing that your teachers want to help you just like you want their help, you know, like this is part of their job, and if you are a good student, you're asking the right teachers, they'll be more than willing to help you. But the first step is getting your important info down. So this goes along with what we've been talking about with making a list of main activities. And you can kind of make a separate document that you want to share with your teachers. So this would be your list of most important activities and information about your major in case they want to know it. And a lot of times teachers will ask for this just to get a better idea of like the whole picture of you if you haven't had super personal conversations, so that they can better convey who you are in their letter. And then the second step is obviously asking teachers. So writing and sending the emails, and then putting their info into your application. So the first step is to send a detailed email to your teacher. You want to try and minimize the amount of times you have to talk back and forth, which also helps minimize anxiety for you. So the more time you can put into one first email, making it detailed, including the deadline you want it by, which shouldn't be the same as the application deadline. It should be pretty soon before that. And also just writing out the same template that you can send to multiple teachers, and you can kind of personalize it depending on who the teacher is or what exactly you're asking them for. But just having a similar template that you can kind of copy and paste and work off of every time will help make it less stressful. And like I said, include deadlines and all the important info in your first email, including the document, because then it saves them from having to ask you for it. And yeah, just make sure that you are spending time on this first email so that you don't feel like you have to do a ton of communication. And then the last step is following through. So check in with teachers or mentors or whoever you asked for a recommendation letter as the deadline approaches. You don't want to be like on the application due date, like, where is my letter of recommendation? So even though you might feel annoying, it's okay to check in with them because they're super busy. And a lot of times they like having the reminder because they're like, oh yeah, that's another thing I have to do. So if you do all of this, hopefully it can be a less stressful process to get the letters of recommendation, and make sure that you don't put their information into your application unless they said yes first. That's another thing, because it'll send it to them and it'd be really awkward if they get it and then they're like, no, I can't do it for you. So that's important to keep in mind too. And I'll pass to Sara.
Yeah, and another thing here, honestly, most teachers are really nice about letters of rec, especially if your teacher's pet like I was. They're very nice about it. They want to help you. Like ultimately, they've been nurturing and educating you for the last few years. If you know them well and you've been nice to them consistently, they're going to try to help you. Some teachers might even ask you, what do you want me to include? What's the message you want from this? What parts of your character do you want me to highlight? And what do you want me to stray away from? I know I had a teacher ask me about that. And that was really nice because it really helped me point my letters of recommendation in the direction I wanted or show different aspects. Like one teacher, I was like, hey, I'm not even going into this major. My major is completely unrelated from your class, but can you kind of highlight my abilities as a student and maybe who I am in the classroom? And that was helpful for me to kind of show different parts of myself. Additionally, I had like my debate coach write one that was mainly about my character because I had like traveled with my debate team and, you know, coached younger students. So they knew me more as a person than my teachers might. Stuff like that. Just remember you want diversity with your letters of rec.
And just
Randomly.
to add one more thing, your application is going to tell your story. So when you're choosing who you want to write your letters of recommendation, what activities you want to include in creating your resume, make sure that you keep that in mind, that your entire application from the time you put your name on it to writing your essays and to hitting that submit button, it's telling your story. So you want to be mindful about that.
Absolutely. All right, so just right now, I wanted to remind everybody, take a screenshot of this if you're gonna watch our videos when we post them to YouTube later on. Make sure you're revisiting this slide on the slides because these are some important things you should have on your calendar. You want your SAT subjects, and ACT dates. So this includes when you need to register by, so you can make sure to do that, and when your actual test is. And then among that, you also want to have the dates that you're practicing between. Or studying between. You want to gather your letters of rec between now and October. If you're starting in October, I hate to break it to you, that's a little bit too late. You should ask them as soon as possible, get ahead of the curve. A lot of teachers will make a list in order of who asked them. You don't want to be on the bottom of the list. So make sure you're trying to get to the top of the list. You have more time and they're going to be less tired out from writing all those letters of rec in the very beginning. With your activities list, you should be starting to gather that now. Even if you are not about to be a senior, if you are a freshman about to be a sophomore, you should be writing down everything that you can think of now and do this consistently throughout the years. Just keep compiling stuff as you gain new exposure, new opportunities, and that will help you to not have to think when you get to become an applicant. And finally, start creating your resume. If you're a senior, you should be doing this from September 1st to October 20th. So between those dates is a good time to be really hard working on your resume. And that would allow you to first write out your activities list and then polish it into more of a better resume, you know, in a month or so. So yeah, just some tips here. And next, Madeline is going to talk about applications.
So just like Sara was talking about, keeping track of all the deadlines with applications as well is super important. And I know we're throwing a lot of dates at you and a lot of information about the calendar, and it might seem like, wow, there's so much to do, which in a sense there is, but also the more you plan now and the more you might have to be stressed in the moment writing it all out, the less stressed you'll be later on, because otherwise you're going to end up having it all crammed into like 1 or 2 months and feel way more stressed. So trust us that this is helpful in the process. So for where to apply, I think it's helpful to look at 3 major categories, which is comparing colleges, looking at requirements, and creating an application schedule. And we've talked also about where to apply in terms of different priorities, all of that. But the first thing is when you're comparing colleges, think about what are your priorities and how do they line up with these schools. And you also want to look at the stats, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But a lot of it has to do with all that information. If you line it all up together, how does that line up with your top priorities and what you find to be important in whatever school you go to? And then the second thing is looking at requirements. So does the school have supplementals? Are there early deadlines, essays, all of that stuff? The earlier you find out about that, the better you're going to be able to plan for it and just feel on top of the game, because I know I had some schools that I didn't even know had a supplemental essay until like way too late. And I was like, shoot, I have to write that really quickly now. And it's just not the ideal situation. So the earlier you can find out about all of those deadlines, check multiple sources. Unless it's like the actual school website, then you can probably trust that. But just make sure you know information that's important. And then the last thing is creating an application schedule. So we've talked a lot about timing, but just think about how you can best plan out the parts of these applications. So once you have all this information on the requirements and you're comparing colleges and you've decided what your top colleges are that you would like to apply to, you can kind of start planning out when you want to do each part so that it all gets done on time and you don't feel super overwhelmed with it or behind in the process. And I'll pass to Sara.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a bit about comparing colleges because I was really organized with this and very proud of myself. I actually did this last summer. So about a year ago, I started doing this and I didn't touch it for a while, but it allowed me more time to kind of consider what I was looking for in a college. Ultimately, balance and variety are probably the most important parts of choosing your college application list, what colleges you want to apply to. You should always be choosing a variety of schools that you can get into. So you're going to have reach schools, fit schools, and safety schools. Your safety schools are schools that you are confident you can get in. A lot of times they might be more local. Some people, for them, their safety is community college. That's a perfectly viable option. Just know the requirements to applying to community college. You also want to think about fit schools. Those are schools that you're like, yeah, I could probably get into these. Like it's a 85% chance, not 100%, but it's about an 80-85% chance. I'm pretty sure I could get into these. Your reach schools are the ones where you are really stretching to get into a school that you're not sure you can get into. You're not feeling the most confident. Maybe it's about, 40 or 50% confidence with that, but you want to apply anyway to see if you can make it. For me, I was looking at a lot of fit schools that were like nearby, and then my reach schools were a little bit further, and maybe more private schools and stuff like that. It really depends on you and your own extracurriculars, your grades, stuff like that. But there is no wrong answer. And remember, you don't want to let anybody pressure you into not feeling like your fit schools are good enough. No matter what, the fact that you are going to college is already an achievement in and of itself. So I want you to really think about how much you have already put in to get here. So very proud of you, no matter what schools you are actually choosing to apply to. You also want to think about in-state versus out of state. Like I said, if I wanted to maybe go out of state, for me, I wanted to go to the East Coast. I didn't end up going, right? But I wanted to. So I was applying to schools that were in the East Coast as well as schools in California. If you live in California, like most of you, I'm pretty sure do, we have some amazing schools here. So it's really awesome that we have all these great schools here that we can apply to. And Nailah's all laughing at me now. That we have such great schools to apply to in state, and we can pay lesser tuition. So A+ for that. Out of state schools are just like if you have a particular area of the country or maybe even the world that you want to apply to. You should also be comparing the stats and deadlines of school. I know for me, I had a very abundant list of colleges I wanted to apply to, and I did not apply to all of them simply because I ran out of time. But you can be more better at planning than I was, and that will help you to keep track of like when the deadlines are and kind of stagger them out for yourself. Here is the spreadsheet that I made. I think, yes, I hyperlinked it here. So I have the physical spreadsheet here, which everybody has access to. Someone can put in the chat for me. And I had the college name. These were colleges I wanted to apply to. The prospective major, I took it out, but I had some majors in here. The location, because that's a pretty important thing, right? If it's in California, I know it's going to be cheaper. If it's in, DC, it's going to be a little bit more expensive for me to pay for. I also put the average cost. So how much would it cost with aid for me to attend this, knowing that I might get a bit of aid. And then the academics. So I ranked it here like A+ academics, A academics, A- academics. I think I used like niche.com or something like that to find this info. It was really helpful. You could also read about students' experiences there. And that's where I got this part about culture. People would talk about whether it is a very quiet college town or more of a stressful experience if it's more cutthroat. And that really directed me into the directions that I wanted to go in terms of application, my priorities here. There was also the SAT and ACT. This was before they said that a lot of schools didn't require it, but I still wanted to submit my SAT score. So I put that here just to kind of help me decide, okay, would these be within my academic range? If that makes any sense. With obviously test scores aren't everything, but just an average is kind of helpful for you to look at. Don't be afraid to apply to schools that have high SAT scores if you didn't get the highest SAT score. Remember, it's all about you as a well-rounded individual. You're not just looking at your SAT score. So don't be afraid to apply even if this isn't the range that you have. And then I also put the deadlines here because I knew if there was like, a few of them on January 1st or January 2nd, I'd be having to do those simultaneously. So between those, I might want to choose which ones I actually want to apply to the most. Okay, and next I'm going to pass it back to Madeline.
Yeah, so quickly before I get into looking at the requirements, just on the same note of comparing colleges, I just wanted to talk really quickly about the fact that there's a lot of schools. And so when you're first looking, you might be like, how the heck am I supposed to find where I want to apply if there's like 10 million schools and I have no idea where I want to go? So I think what's helpful, and clearly like Sara like had a lot of schools she wanted to go to, and you can start from a really long list, but some things that might help in figuring out where you might even be interested in or just narrowing down a list are looking up like areas that you're interested in. So if it's like a state that you really want to go to, you're like, I really want to live in New York. You can look up New York universities, or I really want to stay in California, look up California universities. And I found out about some that I never even heard of before. Or if you have a certain subject area that you're interested in, or like a major that you might want to be looking into, you can look up like good schools for science or good schools for this certain major, and that can help you find just schools that fit you from the get-go instead of looking at a ton of random names and being like, I don't even know where to start. So anyways, that's just some general advice for finding colleges to apply to. And then next is looking at requirements. So this is an important part of the college application process, and especially doing early on, because once you have a sense of your college list, you want to know what you're going to have to do to be able to apply to this place. So I use University of Portland as an example because that's one of the places I applied to. And so the requirements for here are your application, which can either be through University of Portland or the common application, which is kind of common to a lot of private schools. And then your official high school transcripts, that's pretty common too. SAT or ACT scores, they're optional in here, but like Sara said, optional equals recommended. So if you can, definitely try to get those in. And then for this school, there was like a counselor report / recommendation form, and some different schools have this. I think it's more common for private schools, especially through the common application, but that's definitely something to make sure you know about so that you can ask your counselor ahead of time, who's another person you'll need to talk to possibly for a letter of recommendation. And then essay, so this one had the common application essay and then supplemental essays, which were like explain one of your extracurriculars in more detail, and then why do you want to go to this school, short response. This is actually the school I was talking about when I said I didn't know they had a supplemental essay. So I had to do it last minute, and I had to quickly learn how to write a like why school essay. So hopefully our little spiel about that in the earlier session is helpful in that process for you guys. And then this school had one letter of recommendation, an application fee, and there was a priority deadline, which is something that certain schools have. So it's not like an early decision or early action deadline, but it's a priority deadline, meaning you're going to have priority, kind of a first come, first serve. So if you apply by this certain date, you have more of a chance to get into the school. And so I found out early that I got into the school, which I think is because I applied to the priority deadline. So I would recommend doing priority deadlines if your school has them. But this is kind of an example of things that you might have to do for requirements to a school, and just to keep in mind all the different parts to each individual application. So yes, that was a lot. And now I'll pass it back to Sara again.
Couldn't figure out how to unmute myself for a second. Yes, so this is kind of just making sure that you have like bigger schedule, I guess. You always want to be scheduling your deadlines for different parts of the applications. It really helps to like make a spreadsheet here, because like Nailah was showing earlier with that spreadsheet where she had some of those general questions. Every single application is going to be different. If you apply to a lot of them through the Common App, there's a lot of different supplementals. I know I applied to 3 schools through Common App. Some of them have like 7 or 8 plus, and it was a lot to keep track of. So here's what I did. This is actually my example here. So for the UCs, I had the personal insight questions, and I had like a status box that I filled once I finished it. For the CSUs, there was no supplemental, so I just had to finish the basic application. For the Common App, there's a Common App essay, which we talked about at our essays meeting. But yes, I had to finish that essay. And so I put that as one of the requirements. Now, Brown is one of the schools that I applied to that had a lot more supplementals. There was a question about elaborating on an extracurricular, a question about the open curriculum and how I would best use that to my advantage, a question about how I would contribute to Brown's community, and a question about a place or a community that I call home. And so these were each different. So I put the word count for all of those. And I just kind of checked them off as I went to make sure that I was staying on track and that I could finish them on time and like have every little piece done. You'll see that I had the official due date in this one column, but a projected due date in a different column. This might have been due on December 4th, but I wanted to finish it about a month ahead. And this was, I think, I don't think I got any of these done by the projected due date, but it's what I wanted to get it done by. You should make them less crazy than I did, because that's a long time in between January and is this November, I think? Yes, I can't read dates if they're not written out. But anyways, yes, so maybe be a little bit less crazy than I was, but for this one specifically, the Common App, I wanted to make sure I had it done before I did like Brown or other supplemental essays, so that if I wrote something in my Common App, I could keep a central theme with my other essays. So remember, it's kind of a give and take situation based on what schools you specifically are applying to and stuff like that. But it doesn't hurt to have projected dates so that you can get things done on time. Okay. Oops, that was the wrong thing. Did not mean to do that, sorry. But yes, that was hyperlinked, so you can look through it once you go through the slides. Okay, so next we're going to talk a bit about deadlines here. And I just wanted to mention with this quickly, you should put those due dates and goal dates on your calendar. So you might have this full organizational feature, but it doesn't hurt to also put them on your calendar. So if you're only looking at your calendar, maybe you posted it on your wall, you'll remember, oh, I need to write that essay before, 3 days from now. So I'll, spend the next couple of days writing that one essay. All right, and now I want to introduce more things about supplementals, because some schools require additional materials, some of them recommend additional materials, and some of them have them as an option. So yes, we want to talk about all of those. The first big thing here is that you need to have your online application portals ready to go. Every single time, I didn't know this before applying to colleges, so this is something you should think about a lot. Every single time you apply to a school, they're going to give you portal login information. So even though I applied to 3 CSUs, I had to get 3 separate portals, even though the CSU is one application. They emailed me and they said, click this link and create a portal. What that does is it allows you to go through and see the status of your application. Through this portal is where you're going to actually see if you got into the school. You might even see if you got aid for the school, like financial aid. They might be asking you for some other things there too, like maybe they need you to verify something. That's going to be within your portal itself. So every single school you apply to is going to have a different portal. Even though the UCs are one application, they're each going to have a different portal per school. I recommend with this to keep track of them in some way. You'll see right here at the top of my bookmarks. This is actually kind of old, I should delete it. But here's all of these schools that I applied to and all of their portals that I needed to log into. So that just helped me to keep track of all of them. Nailah is going to show you a example of a spreadsheet of how you can maintain your usernames and passwords.
Thanks, Sara. So like a madman, I applied to over 20 universities. So I definitely needed a tracker. So as soon as you submit your application, usually 24 to 72 hours, they follow up with a confirmation email and then an email that gives you a link to your application portal. And then they give you your login credentials. And sometimes those login credentials work for a certain set of hours, and then you have to go in and create your own. So what I did was I created a Google Doc and I broke it down by institution. And then I put the link to the application portal and or contact email that I needed in order to access the email in my Gmail account to see that link again. And then I created the login credentials. So that included my username and password. I also saved them on my computer. So that way, if the glitch or something ever happened, I had it already there. And so that's just one way that you can utilize a tracker to save your application portal and login credentials. Okay, so what are the types of supplementals? We discussed this a little bit earlier, but we'll talk about it a little bit more here. And so we have program-based, video supplements, additional letters of recommendation, and resumes, transcripts as well, and your scores. So program-based is for if you're applying to be like in a theater major, engineering, music. So they'll ask you to upload maybe an art portfolio or a video of you playing an instrument or a song you produce, things like that. And then I know Brown had us do an optional, quote unquote, optional introductory video. And I said, oh, you don't have to do any edits or anything like that, but you still want to put your best foot forward, right? So you went in there and you had like a month or so after the application was due to upload a video just introducing yourself, who you are, and why you want to attend Brown and what you hope to learn there. And then additional letters of recommendation come from people who you didn't initially put on your application who have written you a letter of rec, and so you can upload that. But I didn't really see that on a lot of the schools I applied to. It was far and few. And then once again, your academic resume, that option to upload your resume. Again, they say it's optional, but highly recommended. And so we did create a tracker here, and we'll put that link in the chat.
Yeah, here's the tracker. It's really helpful. It just helps you to go through and make sure you have a lot of stuff done. So I definitely recommend using this. Nailah.
Please remember to keep track of all of your supplemental deadlines. Okay, so what do you do after the application? So you went through, you submitted all your apps. Now you're like, oh, I can take a break. Not necessarily. So here's what you have to do and stay on track of after you've applied to all your schools. Next slide. So first things first, like we said, have your online portals. I actually messed up, here's a little story time, and I didn't create my portal application for one of the schools I applied to. And so they kept sending me emails and was like, you need to create your portal, you need to create your portal. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot to do this. So I had to go back through and create that. So as soon as they send you those emails, create those portals soon, like right then and there. So that way you don't have to worry about it later, and then add it to your tracker. And then watch out for emails from schools, because a lot of the schools will send you emails about, hey, we didn't get your FAFSA, or hey, we didn't see this uploaded to your application. This part of your application is missing. So check your emails constantly. Lastly, financial aid. Like we said, you'll get emails about, hey, we need your FAFSA, or maybe you filled out the wrong date. Just stay on track of that. Lastly, scholarships and grants. So apply for scholarships. I'm still applying to scholarships, even though I've already graduated. So they're always coming in, especially now too. So.
All right.
And I actually have a scholarship opportunity that I want to present to any, you have to be at least 18 years old and you have to be going off to college. And it's something that my church is doing in partnership with an education nonprofit. And so there's no essay required. It's really easy. So if you know anyone who is 18 years old at least, they're attending college or on their way to college within the next 8 months, then send over this information. We've hyperlinked it here so you can have access to it. I believe it closes August 1st, so this Sunday. So, yeah.
And Madeline?
Okay, so then it's making the decision. We're jumping ahead a bit in your timeline, but since we're here, we wanted to make sure we covered the final thing, which is making the decision. So this is tricky, especially if you have a long list of schools you applied to, and even if you get into a lot of schools, like you're excited to get accepted to them, and then you're like, oh wait, I have a lot to decide from. So the first thing that we recommend you do is compare your options. So compare financial aid packages. Oh my gosh, words are not coming to me anymore. Compare financial aid packages, opportunities, and the aspects of the schools. So whether it's in-state versus out-of-state, or how much scholarships they gave you, or how much financial aid in general they gave you, or is it like the location that you care about, or the major that they have. Any of those things are important to compare, just as you were comparing schools to decide where you were applying to. then making a pros and cons list for each school. So see where the pros outweigh the cons. Just for you specifically, use your priorities list that you already created, use things that you know about yourself and what you really care about when you're talking about your colleges, to make these pros and cons lists, and just be mindful of which ones you're more drawn to. And sometimes it can come down to a gut feeling at the end. Like you have two options that you're deciding between, and you just have to go with your gut where you feel most at home or most excited about, because the most important thing is that you're excited to go there and to learn, because otherwise you're not going to be motivated and you're going to go really in debt and you're not going to feel excited about that. So the last thing is give yourself time. So the earlier you start your decision-making process, once you have all your answers, the better. You can kind of give yourself to just time to sit and reflect and think about your different options, make lists, and then give yourself some time away from those lists so that you don't have to go from list to decision right away. Talk to people you trust, talk to anyone who will listen, and just like rationalize your logic for the schools. And sometimes it's not really about logic, it's just kind of about like what your feeling is with the school, which is a completely acceptable way to make the decision too. So all of those things can kind of help you figure out where you want to go when it comes down to that decision after you've already applied and all of that and you have your answers. Did you want to add anything, Sara?
Yes, I did actually. So one thing I wanted to say with this also is like Madeline and I both struggled a lot with choosing our school. I know Nailah was pretty like, I'm good, I got my Cal Poly. But Madeline and I specifically like really right up till the deadline decided on our schools. For Madeline, I know there was like financial aid with one of the schools wasn't as good, but it was her favored school and stuff like that. So for her, it came down to that. For me, I got into two schools that were very similar academically. One of them is in a city I did not like, and one of them is in a city I liked more. But the one that was in the city I liked more was a little bit more cutthroat, and the other one was a lot more friendly. So there was a lot of weighing for me. I ended up talking to two people who went to the schools that I was comparing, and they kind of gave me their like actual lived experience and told me about it. And you know, do they think I would fit in there, knowing me and having known me for a few years? And that helped me to decide on the school that I wanted to go to. Also recognize not going to be perfect. Sometimes you're not going to get into the perfect school in the perfect location with the perfect academics or the perfect major. It doesn't have to be. Like Madeline's been driving in this whole last few weeks. Just do the next best step for you. Whatever is the best option. It doesn't have to be the perfect option, the best option for you. And the final thing I wanted to apply, we don't exactly have a slide for this. Please be kind to yourself. You're not going to get into every college. You might, that would be amazing. I did not get into my dream colleges. I will be totally upfront with you. I'm not afraid to say it because they were hard colleges to get into. Most people I know did not get into their dream colleges. Please be kind to yourself. Recognize that your academic abilities do not define you as a person. The schools you get into do not define you as an academic even. Keep that confidence in yourself. Recognize your worth and that some colleges have bias. Some colleges have a lot of applications. Some colleges, maybe your major is really filled up, or maybe your application wasn't perfect. That's okay. All of those things are okay. They're very human mistakes, human errors, and some of the stuff is out of your own control. Also recognize with really prestigious schools, sometimes there's other aspects that might really contribute, such as people's income and stuff like that. So please be kind to yourself and recognize that you might be the perfect candidate, but the institution might have other things at play. So yes, take care of yourself, please.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also important to remember that like, just as the colleges are deciding on you and whether you were accepted into the school, they're deciding if you were the right fit for their school, and you're deciding if you're the right fit for their school. So it's kind of like a back and forth process. So just because somewhere rejected you doesn't mean that you're any less of like a good person or qualified or anything. It just means that you maybe weren't right for that specific school and you wouldn't have fit in with the community. And so you can take that as a sign that that wasn't the best place for you, and you're going to end up at wherever the best place for you is. And there's no right decision in the process. So I know for me, like Sara was saying, I got really attached to the school that was not even my dream school to begin with. And then once I started weighing out my pros and cons and thinking about all the different aspects of the schools, I ended up deciding that where I'm going, UC Santa Cruz, fit me a lot better. And I had just gotten so attached to this idea of a school at some point that I wasn't really looking at what would be the best fit for me and how I would fit into the community and the location and how it would affect my life. So I think that just knowing that wherever you end up will be good and you'll have a good experience, and just weighing out pros and cons and thinking about how you're going to fit into a place is really important, and not taking any like rejections from schools personally. Anyways, yeah, that's my spiel.
There's also the thing to be noted that you can have the exact same statistics as someone and not get into the school if they did, or them not get into the school if you did. I have friends who didn't get into the school I did, or I didn't get into the school they did, and we have very similar resumes, grades, everything. So keep in mind, it's so subjective, and there's so many factors. It is not your fault if you don't get in. Keep in mind, a lot of these schools have like thousands and thousands of applicants every year, and you not making it is not going to be the end of your world. You can still make opportunities out of whatever situation you're put in. But also give yourself time to grieve. Like if you didn't get into a school and you really worked hard and really have been dreaming about that school for years, that's okay to be sad. Like don't be upset at yourself for being sad. Don't let people be like, hey, it's fine. If it isn't fine, it isn't fine, and you can still process those emotions. But after you're kind of done processing them, try to just keep moving forward with that and seeing the opportunities in front of you. Nailah, did you want to add anything? Sorry, we kind of went on a rant there.
No, I think you guys covered a lot, because I too didn't get into my dream schools. I was rejected from my top 8 schools, and I can tell you it was all Ivy Leagues. And I was sitting there with my family. It was kind of embarrassing. I was like, dang, I thought I was really gonna get in. But I had to come to a realization with myself that I worked my hardest. I put my best foot forward, and the school that I ended up going to is providing me with a full ride scholarship and a community of people who are going to back me up and support me. So just like they said, take it easy on yourself. Don't beat yourself up, and realize that everything happens for a reason.
All right. With that, sorry for the sappy talk, but we hope that you'll remember it once college decision season comes around. Madeline is going to start us off on our final mental health tip.
Yes, this is our mental health. Oh my gosh, mental health tip number 4, our last one, and it's about how to maintain mental health during the planning process, because this can be one of the most stressful parts of the process. So the first thing just I want to say is that, like I've said, this process is definitely overwhelming, and recognize that if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, you're not alone. We were in your same position a year ago. And it's also very multifaceted. So mental health is super important to focus on and really make sure that you're taking care of it throughout this whole process, because yes, it's important to get things done by deadlines if it's something you really care about and you want to apply somewhere, but at the end of the day, your well-being is more important, and not meeting exactly your created deadline for yourself, or maybe not spreading it out as well as you want to, isn't the end of the world, and you'll get through it, because I know that I did the same thing. So you for sure will make it through. And then our action tasks for this whole idea is just remember, like I said, to check in with yourself and have consistent self-care, even when you're super busy with schoolwork and college work and you just feel like there's a lot on your plate. Take time to really take care of yourself, because you're not going to be doing as good of a job on your schoolwork or on your college applications if you don't feel like you were taken care of. And so that's really important, especially because the application process is so much, like Nailah was saying earlier, so much just a picture of you and who you are as a human being. And so if you're not taking care of yourself while you're answering these questions and writing essays, you're not going to feel like you did your best work or put your best foot forward, and they're not going to truly know who you are. So I think that's important to pay attention to. And then also just using our planning resources to make it more manageable. If it all builds up on you at once, you're going to feel way more stressed, and your mental health is going to be way poorer, and you're going to feel like you don't have time to take care of yourself like you would like to. And so using it to really spread it out, and even though it might feel like you don't want to start work in the summer, or you just don't want to be doing as much work per week, the more you do at a time, and you split it up a little bit at a time, the more you're going to thank yourself later, because you don't have it all in 1 or 2 months or cramming it into certain weeks. And also maybe taking advantage of your weekends instead of doing it at the same time as homework. So if you want to work on it like one day a week on Sunday morning or something, just take out that time and you'll really end up appreciating it for yourself when you can take your other days to focus on school and then rest on one of your days. And then the last thing, I kind of already said this, but just doing a little each day / week, so it doesn't all pile on at once, and start as early as possible. You're here now, like I said, that's a great start. You're already starting early. If you can start some of this stuff before the school year starts, you will be super happy with yourself and you won't feel like it's all piled on. You won't feel like if you're overwhelmed as much. And just like Sara was saying, in terms of even just the application process itself, not even getting your decisions back, but just let yourself feel your emotions. So if you're feeling really stressed out and you feel anxious about the process, let yourself feel that and just take it in for a second. And then after that, you can start thinking about what are your steps to move forward and not feel as stressed or anxious or whatever you feel, which hopefully our resources will help you with. And you can rewatch these videos if you're like forgetting everything, because you've definitely thrown a lot of information at you. So hopefully it's helpful in some way or the other. And just know that organization is key. And even if you're not an organized person, now is the time to start, because you're really going to benefit from feeling organized in this process and not having, an unclear idea of what you have to do or when to do it. And just having it already planned out for you will make your life easier, because you can get to that time and just do the thing. So with the many words I just said, I'll let Sara and Nailah say things too, and then we'll answer questions.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say with this, I think the hardest part mentally for me, I've always been an anxious person. I'm not afraid to say it. That's kind of this whole mental health thing, is like, it's fine to talk about it, right? I was really, really anxious and stressed out during the last few weeks leading up to getting my decisions. It is a long, long, harrowing wait until you get those decisions. I mean, I thought about it every single day for months, right? Just waiting to see if I got into certain colleges and stuff like that. That part is probably going to be really hard, even despite all of the work being done. So just kind of be careful with yourself in there. Try to like break up the monotony and break up the like stressful, anxious thoughts by hanging out with friends, plan a movie night, go to the movies, go out for dinner with friends, go to lunch. Even like my favorite experiences last school year were like after school, when I would just get a couple friends and we'd go get like a coffee and sit in the park. Madeline knows the vibes. After school, we would sit in the park for a few hours and just chat, or maybe just 30 minutes if we only had that much time. That really helps to break up the monotony, and also talk to friends who are going through the same thing as you. Because as cliche as it sounds, talking really does help. And really does ease that anxiety and make you understand that other people are going through the same thing too. So that's my 2 cents. Nailah, do you have anything with that?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize taking breaks. Like for me, I took a 1-week break. I'm going to be so honest. I took a week off. I told myself I'm not touching no more college apps. I'm not logging into my Common app. I even had to delete the app on my phone because I was doing it in the car sometimes. So I took that break so I could gather myself, because it was a long and daunting process. And then that's we were in COVID. So we had to do this all while trying to manage distance learning, manage extracurricular activities that were now virtual. So take those breaks when you need them.
Thank you. Okay, final plug of this program. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. We really hope that you learned a lot from this. Please stay back. We're going to actually we have about 20 minutes to ask any questions you want. So please stay behind. We're going to have some examples of resumes and stuff like that. We're also doing a quick raffle. So if you want to be in the raffle, you can be in that as well. We have 2 $5 Jamba Juice gift cards donated lovingly by Colette, who is still here. So yes, that will be really awesome. Please also follow us on Instagram at 916Rise. Shameless plug here. We have a lot of fun stuff going on. At 4:30, we have Asking for a Friend, which is Madeline and Colette's really awesome opportunity for you to get answers about mental health questions you might have. Oh, dang, we actually have 6 free Jamba Juice gift cards or something like that. Colette can explain it in a second. And here's all of our contact information. If you have any questions at any point, if you need some help with your applications or you forgot something, you can email us, you can DM us on Instagram. And lastly, I didn't actually get to really put this on here, but we have a YouTube channel that's been getting created as we speak. We're going to post all of the videos of these lectures on that YouTube channel. In the description box of all those videos, we'll have access to the PDF with all the links. You'll have access to the slides presentations. So you can rewatch and revisit everything. And that should be a really, really helpful experience for everybody. So with that, I wanted to say thank you. We're going to pause the recording right now. So we'll wave goodbye. And